funders are our Lesters. Now, like you could say about Lesterland, this is what you can say about USA Land. Of course, the Supreme Court was right. The people have the ultimate influence over elected officials because there is a general election. But as in Lesterland, only after the funders have had their way with the candidates who wish to win in that general election. And number two, obviously, this dependence upon the funders produces a subtle and understated and camouflaged bending to keep the funders happy. Candidates for Congress and members of Congress spend between 30 and 70% of their time raising money to get to power or to get their party back into power. And as they do that, they develop, as many of us would, a sixth sense, a constant awareness about how what they do might affect their ability to raise money. They become, in the words of the X-Files, shapeshifters, as they constantly adjust their views in light of what they know will help them to raise money, not in issues 1 to 10, but in issues 11 to 1,000. Leslie Byrne, a Democrat from Virginia, describes that when she went to Congress, she was told by a colleague, quote, "Always lean to the green." And to clarify, she went on, he was not an environmentalist. And then number three, reform that angers the funders in our system, we can say is unlikely. So in this sense, I want to say first, the United States is Lesterland. Here's the second point. The United States is worse than Lesterland. Worse than Lesterland. Because you can imagine in Lesterland, if we Lesters got a letter from the government that said to us, you guys get to pick who are the candidates that will run in the general election. You know, there are Lesters from every class. There are black Lesters and white Lesters. Not many women Lesters, but okay, let's put that detail aside for a second. There are Lesters from every class. You can imagine there would be a kind of aristocracy of us Lesters. Right? It's at least possible. We would think we need to act in the good of Lesterland. It's our job, it's our purpose, it's our role. They look up to us, Lesters, to help them pick the best candidates who will run. But in our land, in this land, in USA Land, the Lesters act for the Lesters. Because the shifting coalitions of interests that comprise 0.05% are formed on the basis of whatever issue is just over the horizon. So if it's climate change legislation, you know it's coal companies and oil companies who comprise a significant portion of the Lesters. If it's healthcare, you know it's insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies and doctors who form a significant component of the Lesters. Whatever the issue is, whatever the issue that has to be blocked, whatever reform needs to be stopped, you can read back from that and understand who makes up the Lesters. And when they gather together and make their contributions, they are not asking for legislation in the public interest. They are asking for legislation in their interest. So in this sense, the United States is worse than Lesterland. And finally, point number three. Whatever one wants to say about Lesterland, in our version of Lesterland, in USA Land, this conflicting dependence upon the Lesters versus the people is corruption. Corruption. Now, I don't mean it's brown paper bag corruption with cash secreted to members of Congress. I don't mean it's Rod Blagojevich corruption where people are engaging in criminal acts. Indeed, I'm willing to stipulate the complaint I have has no criminality attached to it all. I'm willing to assume everything I'm describing is perfectly legal. Perfectly legal. But even if it's perfectly legal, it is still corruption relative to the baseline that our framers gave us. Our framers gave us what they called a republic. And by a republic, they meant a representative democracy. And by a representative democracy, as Madison described in Federalist 52, they meant a government that would have a branch that would be, quote, dependent upon the people alone. So here's the model of government. They have the people, they have the government. They do it on slides. It's cool. The way that bounces like that. It's the people and the government. An exclusive dependency, and so would the public good be found by that exclusive dependency. But here's the problem. Congress has evolved a different dependence. No longer a dependence upon the people alone, increasingly a dependence upon the funders. And this is a dependence too. It is different and conflicting from a dependence upon the people alone, however, so long as the funders are not the people. This is corruption. corruption of the design that was to be this constitutional democracy. Now, this corruption has an effect. Its first effect is that Americans believe, because of it,